The President has kindly agreed to answer any questions that you may have, so we're just going to give you a chance to sort of form the questions in your head, and there's going to be two microphones, one on the left and one on the right. And in the meantime, I'll throw a first question of my own. So in 2010, Chile entered the OECD. It was the first country in Latin America to be invited in, or I should say in South America to be invited in. And that reflected its human development, income per capita, and transparency. But now that Chile is competing not just against the countries in South America, but against the countries in the OECD, what are the challenges in order for Chile to gain in OECD rankings?
That's the first question. Well, actually, for us, it was a great accomplishment when we were incorporated to the OECD, because from now on, we are not comparing ourselves with developing countries. We need to compare ourselves with the most developed countries in the world. And that was a great challenge, but at the same time, a tremendous motivation for Chile to improve. And if you see the world rankings in terms of transparency, in terms of honesty, in terms of competitiveness, in terms of many other, you will see that Chile is doing very well, because we are much closer to the OECD countries than to the Latin American countries. And by the way, Colombia has just been accepted to the OECD, and I want to congratulate the Colombians, because with this is Mexico, Chile, Colombia, and next year we hope that Costa Rica will be incorporated. So you see, as Latin America doesn't want to be part of the third world. I remember that Václav Havel, the prime minister of the then Czechoslovakian Republic, he was asked whether he was going to follow the third path. At that time, it was the capitalist model, the socialist model, and some people were thinking about the third path. And he said no, because the third path will bring us to the third world, and we want to get rid of that. And so he was very much committed with an open, free market economy where entrepreneurship and the initiative of free citizens is the key engine of progress. And therefore, for us, being part of the OECD and being compared with the OECD country has been a tremendous challenge, but I think at the end of the day, it has been very helpful and very fruitful for our economy and our society.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Now I'll open up the floor to questions, just reminding the audience to please identify yourself and keep your questions succinct, and please make it a question. So we have two microphones, one on each side of the room. If you can put your hand up and our volunteers will help identify you.
Hello, my name is Corinne Boone. I'm from Hatch. I'd like to thank you for your excellent presentation. My question to you is about sustainable development in the mineral resources sector. And I know that Chile is very passionate in this regard. So can you give us some examples of some of the interesting initiatives that you're focusing on in Chile to encourage sustainable development in the mineral resources sector?
To encourage what? Of course, yeah. Well, there are many people that think that there is a controversy, a contradiction between development and conservation of our environment and nature. It's not the case, because the new technology allows us to really regard those two objectives as very complementary rather than contradictory objectives. So in our case, we have put together a new environmental institutionality. We have a new Minister of the Environment. We have also a superintendency, which is in charge of controlling that all the rules are being honored. We have an evaluation agency that is in charge of evaluating new projects so that they fulfill with the requirements. At the same time, we have environmental courts. So we have a specialized court to take care of this, and not the ordinary courts that sometimes don't have the expertise or the experience about this. So I think that we do have a very modern institutionality to deal with this challenge of dealing with economic development and at the same time having a sustainable growth, and therefore the two things will support each other and not compete with each other. And for that reason, we have changed many rules and many laws in my country. For instance, we have very strict standards for thermoelectric plants. We also have a very new and modern standards for big projects in terms of keeping and preserving and protecting our environment. Chile and Canada are countries which are blessed. We're blessed by God in terms of the environment. You have your own marvels, and we have our marvels. And we have a responsibility to protect them. But it doesn't mean that you have to choose between one or the other. You can perfectly well, with good policies and good behaviors, be able to compatibilize economic growth and economic development with the protection of our nature and our environment.
Thank you so much. Do we have another question, maybe on the other side of the room? Just put your hand up and the microphone will come to you.
My name is Robin Engel. We're not in the resource business. We're in the insurance business, healthcare, technology, and we do assistance for travelers. We've picked Santiago, Chile as our hub, and we're actually building out offices there, which will add to employment in Canada. So this is a question more for Canada and Chile at the same time, to ease the capability for us to have people go back and forth. For example, in Canada, we've hired Chilean Canadians. I've got one here, Pedro, who runs one of our assistance groups here in Canada. And we've got Chileans we've hired in Chile who have to come back and forth. And the easier the governments can make it, the better it is for us companies, because we will use that and grow the businesses in technology and intellectual property, not just in resource industry.
So what's the question?
I'm used to doing statements, so.
But you said that you were
Make it
asking
easy.
two questions, one to the Canadians and one to the Chileans. And up to now,
What
we
can
have
you
no
do?
question.
Yes, thank you, Your Excellency. What can the governments do to make it easier? You can have free trade, but what can you do to make it easier, especially for companies like ours that are in the knowledge business? You know, it's a different business. It's very large worldwide, and Chile and Canada can actually work well in these markets, especially in other parts of Latin America. We can use Santiago as a hub.
Good. Well, two things. First of all, we are incorporating to our free trade agreement, that that's part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, better ways to protect innovation, intellectual property, because we need to protect those property if we want to have more people investing money and resources and commitment to create new assets in terms of intellectual property. So that's something which has been considered in our free trade agreement with Canada and with the US, and is part of the discussion that we are having now for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And the second thing, which is very important, yesterday I think that Chile was appointed as a designated country of origin, which means that in Chile we have a rule of law and we respect human rights, and therefore that will facilitate the issue of visas for people coming from Chile to Canada, because we don't ask for visa for Canadians visiting Chile. So we are taking all those measures, taking into account the risks that we have to take into account in order to facilitate not only the trade of goods and services, but also the trade in terms of intellectual property, innovation, science, and technology, and the same thing with the people. We are facilitating the movement of people. And those two things will be to the benefit of your company, since you are involved in moving of people and at the same time in intellectual property.
Thank you so much. Probably have time for two more questions.
Thanks. Steve Best from KPMG. Muchas gracias, señor Pinera, por el discurso. Fue muy interesante. I spent the last 4 years living in Chile advising foreign investors on infrastructure investments and energy investments. And I guess one of the challenges that Chile faces is the supply and distribution of energy, and especially with the significant mining sector in the north where energy is hard to generate and supply. And what is your government's or what is the plan for future energy development, especially related to the mining sector in the north?
Well, we are fully aware that we have two huge challenges in the future. One is with respect to energy, and the second one has to do with water. And both of them are extremely important for the mining sector. Not only for the mining sector, but very important for the mining sector. In terms of infrastructure, we have a portfolio of investment projects of more than 100,000 billions. And therefore, if you want to invest in Chile, this is the right time to do it, because we will need to invest 100,000 millions, not billions. Maybe in the future will be billions. $100,000 million. A good part of that will take place in the mining and energy sectors, and the rest, most of it, will take place in the infrastructure sector. With respect to the energy sector, we need to double our capacity to produce electricity within the next 12 years in order to feed our development process. If we want to keep growing at 6% per year, we will need to double our energy production capacity within the next 12 years. And for that, we have one natural resource, which is a renewable source of energy, clean, which is our hydroelectric power. And it's not easy, and you know that very well, that there are many people that are opposing all projects. People that have a special interest or that take care or have a strong commitment with the environment, but we are really pushing forward our investment in energy, taking into account that we need to use our most valuable natural resource, which is water. The fact that we have the Andes Mountains and 200 kilometers from them, the ocean, in the middle, a big change in altitude is a tremendous source of energy production that we will take advantage of that. But on top of that, we are encouraging renewable, clean sources of energy. So we're investing a lot of resources in solar energy, wind energy, ocean energy, and also geothermal energy, because in Chile we have more than 25% of the world volcanoes. And therefore we have a huge potential in all those sources of energy. In terms of solar energy, in the deserts of the north, we have the highest radiance, solar radiance, that you can find in any other place in the world. And therefore, we are taking advantage of solar energy, wind energy, geothermal energy, and also taking advantage of our natural resources in terms of hydroelectric power. But of course, we will need also to invest in other sources of energy like natural gas. And we were talking with your Prime Minister because probably Canada will become a huge exporter of energy, in particular in terms of natural gas, if you build your pipeline to the West Coast and therefore you reach the Pacific Ocean. So we are investing on that, and we are preparing in order to be able to duplicate or double our electric capacity. In terms of water, which is another very important resource, Chile is a country extremely rich in terms of water, but we're not taking advantage of it. 84% of the water that flows through the Chilean rivers ends up in the Pacific Ocean. And therefore, we have set up a program to increase our capacity to storage water by 30% within this decade. And we have a plan to build a lot of dams all over the country in order to be able to have the necessary water for the agricultural sector, for the mining sector, and also for the people. And the last thing is infrastructure. We will also have to double our capacity in terms of airports, in terms of ports, in terms of roads. So a country that wants to become a developed country will need to do a huge jump forward in terms of infrastructure. That's why we think that we will need to invest those $100,000 million within the next 10 years in order to prepare ourselves in terms of infrastructure, energy, and water, to be able to sustain the needs that a developed country will face in the future.
Well, thank you so much for that well thought out answer. This will be our last question. I'll go to this side of the room now. Anyone have a quick question?
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Mónica Aguirre de Ingle International. We have seen that Brazil, for example, has created the Science Without Borders scholarship. What is Chile doing to promote citizens and students to come to countries like Canada to also promote that integration of cultures and education as well? Thank you.
Well, education, I think, is a matter of all the battles. If we don't win that battle, we won't be able to become a developed country. That's why we are putting so many, not only resources, but commitment and action to change and do a structural change in our educational system. As I was telling you before, we have increased the investment of education from 8.9 to more than $14 billion, which is a huge amount according to our budget. Our total budget is about 60 billion. So therefore, we are right now investing almost 1 out of every 4 pesos in education. What are we doing? We have, for instance, fortified the pre-scholar education, because we have to start educating our kids at a very, very early stage if we want to compensate for the vulnerabilities that they inherit from their homes. That's why we are starting our educational process when the children are 3 years old. We have guaranteed universal and free access to education for every Chilean kid since he is or she is 3 years old. We have just increased our mandatory educational system from 12 to 13 years, including pre-kinder, as a mandatory level of our educational system. We are, at the same time, we're increasing the amount of money that the government is channeling to the educational sector, not only at the higher educational level where we have the university where people are very aware of their rights, but also with the kids, that they do not protest, they do not march, but they need and they deserve a better educational system. With respect to what we're doing to integrate our system with, for instance, with the Canadian system, we do have a scholarship program by which we are giving scholarship for Canadian students that want to come to Chile, and we are also funding Chilean students that want to come to Canada to study in your university. It has been very successful in one way. From Chile to Canada has not been as successful the other way, and we're working on that. And at the same time, we have something which is called the Startup Program, by which we're trying to attract innovators all over the world. Many of them have come from Canada. And we give them a grant of $40,000 plus a working visa if they undertake their projects in Chile. And that has been extremely successful. We have more than 1,000 new entrepreneurs in our country. Many of them have come from Canada. And therefore, in terms of education, we are working, and also in the educational reform within our country. Right now, we are guaranteeing a scholarship for all the students belonging to the 60% of the most vulnerable families in our country, and we're guaranteeing a subsidized loan system for the next 30%. So 90% of the students that go to university or higher education in Chile receive either a scholarship or a subsidized loan whose payment is contingent on the income. They never pay more than 10% of their income. And doing that, we have been able to democratize our educational system. Right now, 70% of the 1.1 million students that attend Chilean university are first generation in attending the university. And that has implied a huge change in equality of opportunity. We have passed from 100,000 university students in the 70s to 1.1 million today. And I hope that we will be able to strengthen this scholarship program with Canada in order to be able to incentivize Canadian students to come to Chile and Chilean students to come to Canada. That's something where we're putting all our effort and a lot of resources, because we are fully convinced That's the battle that we need to win if we want to become a developed country. And by the way, somebody said that there are two kinds of people in the world: those that see things as they are, and ask why, and those who dreams with things that still are not, and say why not. And I think that in the relation between Chile and Canada, we need those dreamers, because there are so many things that we can do from now on in order to increase the quality and the strength of the relationship between Canada and Chile. And that's something that I am extremely optimistic, because I saw that Stephen Harper has exactly the same approach. So he visited Chile last year, I'm here today, and I am absolutely convinced that the best of the relationship between Canada and Chile are yet to come. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank the President for being here with us today and giving us such a stimulating and thought-provoking conversation. We are so grateful for the visit, and as Jonathan said earlier, this visit was so anticipated. We would like to thank KPMG and our sponsors on behalf of the CCA: Barrick Gold, Scotiabank, KPMG, CIBC, Goldcorp, Tech Resources, Antofagasta, Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, Kinross, Borealis, Siemens, and our silver sponsors, Tories, Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, Yamana, Fasken, and the Globe and Mail. That's a pretty long list of sponsors. So thank you.
I'm supposed to receive a gift.
Yes. And finally, on behalf of the CCA, we have a gift for the President.
Here it is.
Here it is. This is a print from an artist in Pangertung.
What is it? Fish. Dolphins.
Smiling whales.
Whales or dolphins? Whales.
Yeah, I think so. So that's from an Iqaluit artist.
If you want to see the real whale, the blue whale, you will have to come to Chile.
Ah, good last line.